going to try to see if this is going to work, and can I explain to you the things that I use when I am painting in oils a finely detailed redhead drakehead. Finely wood burned, stoned in texture. And first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about my surface. It's a just white tag board that I have taped down. I do that because I'll be using this clear pie plate, and the white actually gives me a good reflection of light, and it doesn't distort the colors that I'm actually mixing. The reflection of the white really lights up the plate and shows me what color I've mixed. I also use custard cups. The custard cups I have marked on the bottom side. G is for Grumbacher medium number 1. 50/50 is for Grumbacher medium when it is mixed with Grumbacher Turpentine. 50/50, of course. This is for straight Grumbacher Turpentine. And the L is for lacquer thinner. I just use a basic lacquer thinner. It's used for cleanup work. Then I use turpentine as my medium, and I use a high quality Grumbacher turpentine. This bottle was $18 at Michael's prior to a coupon which gave me 50% off. So a $9 bottle of Grumbacher turpentine, and you can't just use any turpentine when it comes to painting in oils for decorative. Because it's so refined, it doesn't have the same amount of oils in it. If you use cheap turpentine you buy at the hardware store, all you're going to have is shiny paint. It'll never dry to a nice matte finish, which is the goal and why all the work was put into the wood burning. The second medium I use is Grumbacher Oil Painting Medium Number 1. It's a matte medium. The paint that you apply using this medium should come up matte. Now, the first coat that I will be putting on the redhead is going to be straight Grumbacher matte medium. If I used Grumbacher matte medium 100% strength on any subsequent passes, it would dissolve the first layer of paint that I've applied. And so the first coat is straight matte medium Grumbacher Oil Painting Medium Number 1. Then every subsequent coat is 50/50 with the Grumbacher Turpentine. That way it doesn't dissolve the layers you've applied below. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the paint that I'm going to be using. The paints that I use are very old. I bought them 25 years ago, maybe even 30 in some cases. And I'm using Grumbacher's Finest. It was the preference back in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, and they stopped making it. But as with all oil paint, just because it's old, it doesn't mean it is not good. So the outside tubes kind of take on a life of their own, and often I need to use a plier to get the covers off. But you don't need to use as much oil paint because it doesn't dry out. So when we paint with acrylics, we tend to mix more paint than we need because we don't want it to dry out. So you don't have to do that as much with the oil paint on a decorative. Of course, I've got my brushes, and you can see these are blending brushes. Kurt's Waterfall Corner sold them for a while, and then I had 3 different sizes in Kurt's, 6, an 8, and a 10. I found something very similar in the Lang Nickel, which is a size 6, and it's the 5005 Royal Sable. And then this is a Richardson round. It's a Kolinsky sable, but as you can see, it's no longer pointed, so it works out really well for blending, say, on the bill when I actually apply that paint. I'm going to be using 2 old Kolinsky sables. They're worn down. They used to look, let's see, this is a size 10 and a size 12. Here's the size 10. You can see how it used to look years ago. And with use, the point became shorter and shorter and shorter. So it becomes a blending brush. It's the same thing with the number 12. You can see how it's worn down a good 1/2 inch. So these, I never throw Kolinsky sables away, they just get a new job. And this is a Raphael number 1, 8408. It used to be pointed. It's a little ratty at the end. It'll be used for applying darker colors for shadowing. And this will be for, this will help me to work the paint into those smaller areas on the surface of the brush. This is a Royal Sable number 2. It's about a 1/4 inch bright. It might have been a slanted tip, but it's no longer slanted. It's worn out. The other important tool to have when you're painting, whether it's acrylic or oil, is a palette knife. This is a Chase Sun 812. They make them in Italy. It's a wooden handle. I think it was $5.95. You can see $5.95 when I bought it years ago. And the reason I like this type of palette knife is because it's, your hand is lifted up off of the surface so you can actually mix, and the tip is very flexible, and you can mix a very small amount of paint. I have larger ones which allow me to mix larger amounts of paint, but its shape and its flexibility give me some dexterity while I'm mixing that I wouldn't have with a traditional palette knife. I keep wooden toothpicks handy for cleaning eyes, and I also have, this is just a Lazy Susan. It's a double-decker, so there's some rods inside which would allow me to lift this up and make it taller. Not going to do that this time. I've just got some paper towel on it, but it allows me to put the bird or the head or whatever it is I'm working on and spin it without having to actually touch the head. It won't be too big of a deal because I will be painting the head and applying all of the base coats on that, and then I'll be able to use the bill as a handle until this is dry, and then once this is all dry and I'm happy with it, I'll be coming back and painting the bill. I talked about having a color wheel handy. I personally don't need a color wheel, and you probably won't after you take the time to study it. You know, I've talked about the primary colors, and there's only 3 of those. It's red, yellow, and blue. And then there are secondary colors, which fall right in between those primary colors. And say for yellow and blue, the color that falls in between is green. For red and yellow, the color that falls in between is orange. And for blue and red, the color that falls in between is violet. And depending upon how much of each one of these colors you combine, if there's more blue, you're going to have a blue violet. If there's more red, you're going to have a red violet. If there's you've got blue and you've got yellow green, and you've got blue green. So the predominant color in this case, say with green and yellow, yellow green, the way it's written is yellow green because it is yellow green. Blue green is blue and green, so that's blue green. Blue violet, blue violet. Violet red, red violet. So it's important to know the relationship of these colors and what happens when you mix the 2 together, or 3 or 4. I've also mentioned complementary colors. And on a color wheel, the complementary color is situated directly across from any color on the wheel. So for red, directly across, and the secondary or the complementary color is green. For blue, go directly across, complementary color is orange. This is where a color wheel can be very helpful for you when you're trying to choose a complementary color for whatever it is you're painting. So if I want to make orange look shaded, rather than adding black, I can add blue, and it's going to change it to a cooler orange. I could spend all day talking about color, and unless you actually do the mixing, use a color wheel. You want to take and just start with blue, yellow, and red. Just start with those 3 colors, and you'll be able to have every single one of these colors on the outer edge of this color wheel by mixing the 3 that you started with, red, blue, and yellow. So until you start playing with color, you're not going to learn about it. So do not be afraid to play. It's going to be useful. This particular color wheel looks very complicated, and basically what it's doing is it's showing you different hues and values. If you add yellow to blue violet, this is the color you're going to get. If I add blue to blue violet, that's the color I'm going to get. If I add white to blue violet, I'm going to get this lavender color. So this is a really useful color wheel for those who don't understand what color they're going to end up with when they mix their colors. So if I mixed, let's see, I'm going to mix red with yellow. Here's the red, here's the yellow, and that's the color I'm going to end up with. I want to mix blue with red. So here's the red, here's the blue, and that's the outcome. And that would be violet. If you just play with this color wheel, you can learn an awful lot just by saying, you know, what's going to happen if I do this, or what's going to happen if I do that. Pay attention. If you add black to green, that's the color you're going to tone it down. But if you add white to green, you're going to get a hospital green. If you add yellow to green, you're going to get a really nice chartreuse green. So hopefully you can find one of these. I got it off of Amazon. They're at Dick Blick. They're at any art store. And I think it cost all of $2.95. So do yourself a favor. Pick yourself up a pocket color wheel or any color wheel if you don't understand colors yet.